can't have any. You see, when you look at an offshore account can be one that you use to diversify your investments. You know, an account, if you have, let's say you have a student, you're a child who is going to school in America. Like in my case, my daughter is in the States. And, you know, I have to make sure that she's got money to be able to use whenever she needs. You
have a complex network of...
You know? I mean, I'd love to have that one day, and I think there's nothing illegal about it in terms of owning property. Because, you know, the problem we have in this country is that, not only in this country, worldwide, people really focus in what they're investing in, but not where they're investing in. I can tell you there are individuals in this country who owns bonds, mutual funds, but they never ask the question, where are they investing, you know, their money in? They are focusing in what they're investing in. But in most cases, it's not where. And you'll find that all that is invested offshore. In fact, when you raise the question of the president owning properties or the family owning properties, nothing prohibits. I mean, you have to show me the law that prohibits. In fact, Kenya as a country is really taking the right steps in ensuring that politicians locally do not steal money and have it being, you know, invested for them through a nominee without the nominee, stating who the beneficiary are. So those are the steps that the Companies Act, you know, put in place.
And yet the president himself, in his response, did state that offshore accounts have been used to launder money and carry out illegal transactions. Don't you then understand why Kenyans would respond?
I think if you're looking at, let's say, the devolved government structure, and you can be able to attest that this person, you know, a few years ago before he became a state officer, the guy was broke. He was living in Pangani. But now all of a sudden, he's got billions of shillings, you know, and that money is not invested locally. It is invested abroad. So there, you can actually say those offshore accounts have been used to launder money from Kenya abroad.
Is that what you think is happening in the counties?
I think in the counties, yes. I believe in the counties that is what is happening.
Okay, and I'll come back to you for more. Francis, we still have you here, and Sheila, I'll be coming to you shortly. Francis, I want to begin with you on the question that was posed by a viewer anonymously, and we can go back to it. The complex web, yes, so it's not about, he says, it's not about just the assets, but the manner in which these transactions are set up. You know, it's one thing to have a bank account. I imagine many of our athletes have bank accounts in New York, in London, and when they win a race, the money is deposited there. But I think this viewer wants to know more about what your network knows about when there's a setup of sort of very complex and secretive bank accounts. What does that, for what purposes? Help us understand how that would work.
Yeah, I think it is important to give the typology of the kind of discussion we are having here today, and where people open bank accounts, offshore bank accounts. People do not just open offshore bank accounts anywhere. You don't just wake up and go to any country and open an offshore bank account. There are several factors that those people consider. Number one is your ability to hide, the secrecy that that country allows you to do that opening of that account with. But secondly, it's also about the ability to hide from tax or the ability to evade tax. And therefore, the typology of the offshore of these tax havens where people are opening these offshore accounts is places where the corporate tax rate is often lower than countries like Kenya. In addition to that, beneficial ownership laws in most of these countries are almost non-existent. You are not required to actually declare who you are. You are not actually required to furnish enough documents. In fact, in some of these countries, it is harder for you to get a library card than to open an offshore account. You are asked actually more questions when you want to get a library card, for example, in the US, than when you want to open an offshore bank account in some of those places. And I think this is the kind of shock that I am happy that people are having today. That the people named are the wealthy, the rich, and people who have a certain ability to manipulate the international financial system to their advantage, to hide their names, to operate behind nominees and complicated corporate structures, and to ensure that Waihiga today, if we woke up and we were trying to get some of this wealth back into the country, there is no telling the kind of complexity legally that would portend for us. And I think these are the main issues that we need to address, that it is not just anyone that can wake up, go to any country and open an offshore account. It is certain people who are well connected and the people who know where to go, who to go to, who to speak to.
You've actually raised an interesting point that I want to bring Sheila back in on. When you talk about bringing wealth back to the country, Sheila, and I trust you can hear me, between 2016 and 2019, wealthy Kenyans wired back to the country an estimated 1 trillion Kenya shillings from offshore accounts, taking advantage of a tax amnesty that was offered by Treasury. They were not required to declare the source of their wealth or even account for previous year's tax arrears. We also know a think tank last year announced that an estimated 5 trillion Kenya shillings is out of the country at this time. Why do you think this is so?
Yeah, and maybe just to add that there was a whole debate, and there's even an entire report done by the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, just looking at the impact of that amnesty that was given, the tax amnesty of, is it 2018 or 2019? Because there are concerns that it still facilitated capital flight, but to the extent that people didn't have to disclose their sources of income that was then, declared and repatriated. But then questions around then how was this income generated, especially coming from some of these countries that have been highlighted, even in the Pandora's Papers and other leaks that have happened previously, like the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, and so on. But I think one of the other things that has been really concerning is just the state of beneficial ownership across the world. And if you look at some of the demands that have been made on the Financial Action Task Force, is that it really needs to implement and ensure that there are open central beneficial ownership registers across the world. Because even now it's concerning that even in some of the countries that have been highlighted as tax havens, some of them have, of course, rushed to put in place beneficial ownership laws. But then there's a question of whether they're just doing that to tick the box and to get out of that grey list in the Financial Action Task Force and then be cleared. So there's a lot of concern whether whatever we're happening in terms of cleaning up and ensuring that this financial integrity across the world is really for the sake of just doing so, or for the sake of ensuring that there's meaningful reforms in terms of how we manage the financial sector across the world.
Okay, and Senator, let me come back to you on this. And the elephant in the room are the concerns about the relationship between offshore accounts and possibly official corruption. Let me refer you to a case study, one we covered actually as story one in our bulletin today. The case of former Kenya Power boss Samuel Gishuru, former Finance Minister Chris Okemo. We won't go into the details of that. It's still a live matter to some extent in court. But it's no secret. The duo are wanted in Jersey Island to face theft and money laundering charges. Don't you see, again, and I bring you back, that many Kenyans would want more clarity around how transparent it is to really monitor these offshore accounts at a time when in the past it has been on record that some Kenyans have used them for other uses beyond that which you are tabling for us today? Paying school fees for children. It seems more than that.
I like the fact that you're talking about bringing money back and also looking at that case study that you've just shared with us here. If there is a case where people are laundering money or they are obtaining money and sending that money offshore, that is a case that I would support. But for me, the key to any modern investment strategy is diversification. And there are so many goodies abroad. If you have some little money that you've already paid taxes on, nothing stops you from opening an account abroad. For
Kenyans who have never had the privilege of experiencing those goodies, what are they?
I mean, look at the bonds. Look at one goodie which is there is that African countries are known to be politically unstable. If you're a hardworking Kenyan and you can get access to good money, by investing abroad, you actually secure yourself from one country deciding to kill you financially because of silly political instability.
As a politician, should you not pass laws to make our country less politically unstable?
Let me put it this way. Like earlier on, I stated clearly that in Kenya, we are making the right steps. We are taking the right steps. There's no way, Mwaura, today, you can actually come in and take me as a nominee to open an account for you. I stash a lot of money. I invest that money. and I do not declare that you are the beneficiary.
You can't do that in this country right now.
In this country, you can do that. There's no way you can do that. There's no way you can do that in this country. So we are taking the right steps. If you look at the EU, there are countries now that have been banned for EU citizens. Those countries are more attractive. Mauritius is one of them. There's no way as an EU citizen can you do any business or can you have an account in Mauritius without you declaring. So Kenyans are rushing there. Our legal minds here are opening companies for Kenyans abroad, So really, I think what we need to do now is for us to develop regulations, still following the Companies Act. We can amend Section 93 of the Companies Act, I think Company Act 2015.
Are you saying, and I need to keep this short, do you agree that we should amend the law? That
we can amend the law and come specifically with regulation that deals with offshore investments. Nothing stops us. But as we speak right now, there's nothing illegal with that. I heard about the secrecy, and complexity. And the complexity. So what? If I can afford, I am not stealing your money. If I've not stolen your money and I can afford to be able to hire a lawyer who can then be able to make sure that when I'm gone, my family can be able to benefit from that money, I shouldn't be crucified for that.
I don't want to make this a one-on-one. Let me allow Francis to come in. Francis, what's your response? But I know a section of Kenyans may be asking this evening, if it's so lucrative abroad, why are we going to, if anyone has money in this country, you'll just simply ship it out, and a time may come when we have no money in this country for daily consumption.
Yeah, and this is where those within the tax justice networks or campaigners or activists usually get problems with some of the proposals that people have, that it is okay for you to open an account out there, that it is okay for you to move your money out there. If you look at the kind of countries that money is moving away from, it is the countries that actually need this money most. If you look at the people that are involved in moving this money out, it is the people who are well connected, it is the people who hold a certain kind of political clout, it is the kind of people that are able to obtain the best legal minds. And in addition to that, it is important to point out that some of the money that goes out is actually illicitly obtained. This is the proceeds of corruption. It is money that is obtained from the trafficking of ivory. If you look at the list of people that are named in the Pandora leaks, and you connect that to the Panama leaks, some of them are clean, some of them are in business, some of them are politicians, but you will see others that are involved in very shadowy businesses. And I think there is something there that should shock our consciences and say, if there is an international financial system that allows others, people who are clean, to commingle their money with others that are dirty, and both of them to get, the advantages of secrecy, the advantage of not being able to pay tax for the money they earn, I think that is something we should be angry about. Lastly, I want to say, if profits are made in a developing country, our stand within the tax justice movements are, let that money be left in that economy. That is the only way we can grow our economies. But if we are making profits here and shifting these profits to tax havens, countries that are well developed, I think there's a big problem with that. And I think the contribution of what we see now today from the Pandora leaks, I think shows us that we need to do something about it. We need to stem the tide. We need to bring back the money.
Sheila, there's an article that you wrote today in response to, of course, the Pandora leaks as well, and you referenced a little bit about why we need to relook at Article 76.2, which prohibits a state officer from maintaining a bank account outside Kenya except in accordance with an act of Parliament. You feel that it's time for us as a country to have a well-defined asset declaration and lifestyle audit system as a strong tool to fight public sector corruption. Talk to us a bit about that. In a sense, do you feel that what we have is inadequate or has not been properly implemented?
Yeah, but first let me just add on to the calls on the issues around tax justice and economic justice. I think the fact that as a country in this continent, we are still over-dependent on resources by external development partners, that is really compromising our own commitment to really pursue socioeconomic development priorities. So for me, the question that we should be asking, even if we continue to allow people to take resources outside, is what does that mean in terms of development? Those resources that are outside, even if they've been legally acquired, even if they've been legally, moved to those countries, what does it mean for us, for Kenyans? Reducing the amount of resources that is circulating within the economy. Does that compromise, service delivery? And right now we are